I'm a 23-year-old woman with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I worked hard for that degree. Late nights studying, internships, research papers. Psychology isn't just my field of study. It's my passion. My younger brother is 14 and has autism. Psychology happens to be his special interest, which is awesome. I love that we can bond over something I'm passionate about. When I visit my family, we have deep conversations about different psychological concepts and theories. The issue is that my brother gets most of his information from social media. I don't have a problem with that. There's good content out there. But he takes everything at face value without fact-checking. He'll watch a 60-second video about a complex psychological concept and consider himself an expert. During my visit, he kept throwing fun facts at me that were wrong. Or he'd try to correct me on things I knew were accurate. I was always gentle about it. I would say his point was interesting, but explain that research showed something different and offer to look it up together. I never made him feel bad. I just wanted him to understand the importance of checking information, especially in psychology, where misinformation can be harmful. Things came to a head during dinner last night. My mom is a doctor, and we were having an interesting conversation about brain structures and how psychology overlaps with medicine. I was telling my dad about how the left and right hemispheres of the brain control the opposite sides of the body. My brother cut in to say I was wrong and that it worked the opposite way. I gently corrected him, telling him that the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, and vice versa. He said a video he watched said the opposite. I tried to explain that I'd studied this extensively. When he kept arguing, I had to remind him that I had a degree in this field. He dropped the subject, but he wasn't convinced. After dinner, we were watching a movie in the living room. During a commercial break, my brother brought up the brain hemisphere topic again, saying I was wrong. I was getting frustrated. Not angry, just tired of being constantly corrected with information I knew was false. I took a breath and asked him to stop correcting me when he was wrong. I told him his sources were random people on the internet, while mine were textbooks, experimental documentation, and the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated facts. But my brother went to his room, upset. Then my mother looked at me like I'd done something terrible. She told me I should have just let him have his way because he's autistic and just a kid. I asked her if I should really let him believe wrong information about psychology. She said it wasn't about being right or wrong, but about being sensitive to his condition. I told her I'd been patient all week, gently correcting him many times, and that I thought it was important he learns accurate information, especially since psychology was his special interest. My dad sided with my mom, telling me that as the adult, I should know better than to upset my brother. My parents were basically saying I should allow my brother to correct me with misinformation just to avoid upsetting him. It felt like they were using his autism as an excuse to let him be entitled to his own facts. The next morning, I found a psychology textbook I had brought and showed my brother the section on brain hemispheres. He seemed interested. He said the video must have been wrong and he was sorry. I told him it was okay to make mistakes and that's how we learn. I suggested we find some reliable sources online that he could follow. We spent the morning looking up good psychology resources, and I showed him how to check if information is credible. It turned into a positive experience. When my parents saw us getting along, they pulled me aside. My mom said we had worked things out, but told me to be more careful with how I spoke to him next time. I said I had been careful and honest, and pointed out how well he had responded. I told them that treating him like he couldn't handle being wrong wasn't helping him. My dad told me not to make him upset again. I left feeling frustrated with my parents. They think that my brother's autism means he should be allowed to be right even when he's wrong, and that I'm being insensitive by providing correct information in my own field of study. Am I the entitled one here for wanting my brother to have accurate information? Or are my parents enabling entitled behavior by suggesting I should just let him have his way despite being wrong? I'm a 33-year-old mom with a sweet 6-year-old daughter. We've had a normal relationship with my family until recently. My aunt, who's 53, often has my daughter over for sleepovers, which my daughter enjoys, and it gives me a little break. My aunt has always been opinionated, but lately she's been overstepping boundaries more frequently. She seems to think that just because she's family, she has equal say in decisions about my daughter. She doesn't. This incident started when my daughter was staying overnight at my aunt's house. I received a call from my aunt. She told me she was worried about my daughter's shoes because her toes looked red and she thought the shoes were too small for her. I thanked her and said I'd check them when my daughter came home. My aunt suggested we should just throw them out because they were hurting my daughter's feet. I asked her not to throw them out and explained that if they were too small, I wouldn't make my daughter wear them again, but I'd like to pass them on to my niece since they were barely worn. Her boyfriend got on the phone. He said he was concerned that I might make my daughter wear the shoes again. I told him I wouldn't make her wear them if they were too small, but I still wanted them back to give to my niece. But after our conversation, my aunt went behind my back to my mom, who's also 53, to get permission to throw away the shoes. My mom, not knowing I wanted to pass them down to my niece, said it was fine. When my aunt dropped my daughter off after the sleepover, she was acting strange. She pushed my daughter and her bags through the door and left immediately. This wasn't like her at all. She usually comes in for coffee and a chat. When I unpacked my daughter's things, I noticed the shoes weren't there. When I asked my daughter about them, she told me that her auntie said they were keeping the shoes for safekeeping. Safekeeping? I called my mom to find out what happened. That's when she told me about my aunt asking for permission to throw out the shoes. I asked my mom why she would tell my aunt it was okay to throw out my daughter's shoes. She said my aunt had told her they were too small and hurting my daughter's feet, and she didn't want my daughter's feet to get damaged. I told her that I had already explained to my aunt that I wouldn't make my daughter wear them if they were too small, but I wanted to pass them down to my niece. My mom said she didn't know that, and my aunt hadn't mentioned it. I tried to explain that those weren't her shoes to give away. They were my daughter's shoes, and I'm her mother. My decisions about her things should be respected. My mom said I shouldn't make such a big deal out of this because they were just shoes. I explained that it wasn't just about the shoes. This had happened multiple times. My mom and aunt kept making decisions about my daughter and her things without respecting what I say. My mom said she was just trying to help because she's my mother. I told her that being my mother doesn't give her the right to override my decisions about my daughter. I tried calling my aunt multiple times after that, but she wouldn't answer. I was angry. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. They've given away her toys, cut her hair, and made other decisions without asking me, always saying that my mom said it was okay. After thinking about it overnight, I called my mom back. I told her I'd made a decision. If my aunt couldn't respect my decisions about my daughter, and if my daughter couldn't return from her house with everything she brought, then she wouldn't be going over there anymore. My mom said I was overreacting, saying it was just a pair of shoes. I said it wasn't just the shoes, but the principle. I'm her mother, and my decisions need to be respected. My mom said my aunt loves having my daughter over. I said if that was the case, then my aunt needed to respect my authority as her mother. My mom hung up on me. A few days later, my aunt finally called back. She said my mom had told her I wasn't letting my daughter visit anymore because of those old shoes, and she thought that was ridiculous. I explained that it wasn't just about the shoes, but about her going behind my back to my mom when I had already told her what I wanted. It was about her thinking that my mom's opinion trumps mine when it comes to my daughter. My aunt said the shoes were hurting my daughter's feet. I reminded her that I had said I wouldn't make my daughter wear them again if they were too small, but she didn't listen and decided to do what she wanted anyway. My aunt agreed to bring the shoes back. I told her this wasn't just about the shoes anymore. This was about respect. If she wanted to continue having my daughter over, she needed to respect that I am her mother and my decisions are final. The next day, my aunt showed up with the shoes and an apology. She admitted she was wrong to go behind my back and promised to respect my decisions in the future. My mom is still giving me the cold shoulder, but I'm standing firm. My daughter, my rules. Sometimes you have to draw boundaries with family, especially when it comes to your children. It might cause tension, but it teaches everyone about respect and boundaries. I'm 40 years old, have a stable job, a wife, and 2 kids. My younger brother, who's 33, has always been more of a free spirit. I love him, but he makes decisions without thinking about what might happen after. Last year, we started planning a family vacation to Maui for May 2025. It would be me, my wife, our 2 kids, my brother, his wife, their kid, and our parents. We were all excited about it. We talked about snorkeling, hiking, and relaxing on the beach. My dad was looking forward to a fishing charter I booked. Since I have the best credit card rewards, I volunteered to book everything. We found a nice vacation rental on VRBO, right on the beach with enough bedrooms for everyone. It wasn't cheap, but we agreed to split the costs. Everyone sent me their share, and I made the final payment last month. At that point, the booking became non-refundable. Everything was set. The flights were booked, the rental car was reserved, and we made dinner reservations at some restaurants. I created a shared document with our schedule, and everyone seemed happy. Then, last week, I got a call from my brother. His voice sounded sad. He told me his dog had collapsed the day before, and they rushed him to the emergency vet. I asked if the dog was okay, and he said it wasn't looking good, but they were doing everything they could. I felt bad for him. Their black lab was only 6 years old and was part of their family. I told him I was sorry and to keep me updated. 3 days later, I got another call. His dog didn't make it. I told him I was sorry and offered to help if I could. I know how much they loved that dog. A week passed, and then I got another call. This one surprised me. He said he'd been looking at their finances, and with the vet bills, they were in a tough spot. He said they spent over $5,000 trying to save the dog. I told him I was sorry about the expense. Then he told me they wouldn't be going to Hawaii, and he needed his money back for the trip. I reminded him that the trip was non-refundable and that I couldn't get that money back from VRBO. He said it wasn't his problem since he paid me, not them, and he needed his money back. I explained that we all agreed to this and that the booking was non-refundable once the final payment was made. My brother brought up his dog's death, asking if I expected him to go on vacation after that. He said he needed the $7,000 for the vet bills. I told him I understood he was sad, but I couldn't just find $7,000 since the money was gone. It went to the rental company. He told me to figure it out, maybe by finding someone else to take their place. I pointed out that finding replacements with only 2 months' notice wasn't realistic. The conversation got heated. He said I was heartless and didn't care about his loss. I reminded him that this was a financial agreement we all made, knowing the terms. Then he said he would take me to small claims court if I wouldn't give him his money back. I asked if he was serious, and he said he was because I had his money and he wanted it back. I tried to explain that it wasn't his money anymore. It was spent on the vacation rental that he agreed to. He said he didn't care what he agreed to because things change. I said that sometimes we have to deal with what happens after our commitments, even when things change. He called me a jerk, saying his dog just died and all I cared about was a vacation. I said that wasn't fair. I cared about his loss. But these were separate issues. The vacation was planned and paid for, and non-refundable means non-refundable. He hung up on me after calling me names. Over the next few days, he sent me many text messages, each one more angry than the last. He even got our parents involved, trying to get them to pressure me into giving him the money. Mom called me the next day. She said my brother was upset and suggested I could find a way to give him at least part of his money back. I explained that I understood he was upset about the dog, but that money was gone as it went to pay for the rental that we're still using. I said that if I gave him his money back, that would mean I'd be paying for his share. Mom asked if I couldn't help him out since he's my brother. I told her I would if I could, but $7,000 isn't a small amount of money, and it's not like I did anything wrong since we all agreed to these terms. Dad saw my side of things. He said my brother made a commitment, and that even though it was sad about the dog, it didn't change the fact that the money was spent and non-refundable. Things got worse when my brother's wife started posting comments on social media, saying I was stealing from them during their grief. Some friends who didn't know the whole story started asking me about it. Yesterday, I got a letter from my brother saying he would take me to small claims court if I didn't pay him by the end of the month. I was shocked it had gone this far. I talked to a friend who's a lawyer, and he told me I was right legally. The non-refundable booking, with everyone agreeing to the terms, meant my brother didn't have a case. This situation has put a dark cloud over what was supposed to be a fun family vacation. My wife suggested we try to find another family to take my brother's place and split the cost. But with only 2 months to go, we probably won't find someone willing to pay that much on short notice. For now, we're still planning to go on the trip with my parents. My brother isn't speaking to me except through angry texts and letters. I never thought a family vacation could cause such a problem. But here we are. I stand by my decision. I'm not going to pay an extra $7,000 because my brother changed his mind, even with the sad situation. Maybe someday he'll understand that this isn't about being cold about his loss, but about keeping commitments and not expecting others to pay for his decisions. Until then, I'm the bad guy in his story. I'm a 43-year-old woman who loves my quiet life. My partner and I decided kids weren't for us. We enjoy traveling, spontaneous weekends away, and silence in our home. I don't dislike children. I just know my limits. My sister is 3 years younger than me and has built what most consider the perfect family. She's got a great career, works from home for a successful business, and has 3 boys, a 3.5-year-old and twin 2.5-year-olds. Her husband stays home with the kids and is an amazing father. They live about 6 hours away by plane, so visits aren't frequent. Last February, I flew out to spend a week with them. The trip was fantastic. We had sister time, family time, and even a night out with her friends. I left feeling closer to my sister and fond of my nephews. So when I planned another visit last month, I was excited. Here's the thing about me and kids. I can play trucks, build block towers, and read the same story 5 times in a row, but after about 2 hours, I need a break. I'm also sensitive to noise, always have been. Sudden loud noises make me jump, and continuous noise wears me down quickly. I know this about myself. The first few days of my recent visit were challenging. The boys were having a tough time, with meltdowns occurring roughly every 25 minutes. When the screening started, I would step outside or into another room to regroup. I wasn't rude about it. I just needed a minute to breathe. About 4 days into my visit, my sister and I finally had some alone time when her husband took the boys to the park. I thought we'd catch up on life or maybe watch something together. Instead, she criticized me. My sister told me something had been bothering her. When I asked what was wrong, she said she was disappointed that I didn't love her boys the way she and her husband did. I was confused since I'd been playing with them, helping with meals, and buying them gifts. I asked her if I had done something wrong, and she explained that while I was great with the kids when I engaged with them, she noticed I kept walking away whenever they got upset. I explained that the screaming was overwhelming for me since I wasn't used to it, and I just needed a few minutes to recharge when things got intense. She told me those upset moments were when the boys needed love the most. I told her I understood that, but reminded her that they had their parents for that kind of support, and that, as their aunt, I showed them love in my own way. My sister said it wasn't enough and said she wanted me to love them exactly the way they did as parents. I tried to explain that her expectation wasn't realistic, and that nobody loves children exactly the same way their parents do. Not even grandparents or other family members. Everyone has their own relationship. She said she expected me to handle their emotions better. I defended myself, saying I was doing my best, but that expecting me to respond to them exactly like she did wasn't fair because we're different people with different thresholds. My sister said I wasn't involved enough, which hurt because I had flown 6 hours to spend a week with her family, played with the boys daily, and helped with bedtime routines. I asked her how that wasn't considered being involved. The conversation got worse from there. She said I didn't care enough, while I felt she was asking me to be someone I'm not. Eventually, we moved on, but things remained tense for the rest of my stay. On my last day, I made one more attempt to clear the air. I explained to my sister that I truly loved her boys, but couldn't love them exactly as she did because I wasn't their mother. My love was genuine, but it was aunt love, not parent love. She said she had just hoped for more. When I pressed her on what more meant, asking if she wanted me to pretend to be something I wasn't, she couldn't give a clear answer. I pointed out all the ways I showed up for them: visiting, engaging with the kids, sending gifts, and video chatting. I asked if she would prefer I didn't visit at all, since I would always fall short of her expectation that I respond to the boys exactly as she did. That seemed to reach her. She said that no, she wanted me to visit because the boys loved having me there. I asked her to please accept that I show my love differently than she does, and that doesn't make it less valid. Before I left, my brother-in-law pulled me aside. He asked me not to take the situation personally, explaining that my sister had been really stressed about being a good mother lately. He thought she was looking for validation more than anything else. That made sense. My sister has always been the perfectionist in the family, always seeking approval. Perhaps her criticism of me was really about her own insecurities. On the flight home, I thought about what he said. Maybe her comment about me not loving her children the right way wasn't actually about me at all. Maybe it was her way of asking if I thought she was a good mother. I called her the next day. I told her I'd been thinking about our conversation and wanted to understand better. I asked if she was worried about her parenting. After a pause, she asked what I meant. I explained my theory, that when she said I didn't love the boys the way she did, what she might have really been asking was if I thought she was a good mom. She started crying. She said that everyone else made parenting look easy. On social media, other mothers, even our own mom. She said she felt like she was barely keeping it together some days, and then I would come in seeming so calm even when the kids were having meltdowns. I told her that my calmness came from knowing I could leave, that I wasn't doing this 24/7 like she was. I told her that I thought she was an amazing mother and that her boys were clearly happy, healthy, and adored. When she asked if I really meant it, I said I absolutely did. I told her that on my next visit, I would try to stay present a bit longer during tough moments, but asked her to understand that I might still need breaks. She said that was fair and apologized for putting that pressure on me. We ended the call on better terms than we left things in person. I've since sent her some articles about aunt love versus mom love and how different types of relationships with adults benefit children. I've also started setting up regular video calls with the boys, just 15 minutes, which is perfect for their attention spans and mine. I still maintain that expecting anyone to love your children exactly the way you do is unreasonable. But I understand better now where my sister was coming from. It wasn't really about me at all. It was about her need for reassurance in her parenting journey. That said, I'm still enjoying my quiet, childless home and will probably limit my visits to once a year. Love has many forms, and none of them require matching someone else's blueprint. At 33, I've spent nearly 2 decades perfecting my craft. Embroidery, cross-stitch, weaving, you name it. I've won first prize at our state fair competitions twice now, and the only tapestry I ever put in a gallery sold for enough money that my wife and I took a weekend trip to the coast with the proceeds. 3 years ago, I made what I thought was a simple decision. No more commissions. Ever. What had started as a peaceful hobby, something I could do for hours while my brain went into a blissful state of flow, had become a source of stress. The constant back and forth with clients, endless revisions, and arbitrary deadlines turned something I loved into something I dreaded. One evening, after finishing a demanding commission that had required 3 revisions and countless texts with the client, I told my wife that I just wanted to enjoy my art again and that I was done with commissions. My wife nodded and told me that it was my art and I got to decide how I shared it. Since then, I've stuck to my boundaries. I still make gifts for special occasions. A birth announcement for my wife's best friend's baby, a wedding sampler for my cousin. But anything that feels like work, not happening. When I received an Instagram message from Abigail last Tuesday, I was prepared with my standard response. She introduced herself, saying that my friend had recommended my embroidery work to her. She complimented my Instagram, calling my work amazing, and explained that she was looking for someone to create a custom piece for her mother's 60th birthday. She asked when we could discuss details and pricing. I thanked her for the kind words about my work, but explained that I no longer accepted commissions, mentioning this was a personal policy I'd had for several years. I suggested there were many talented artists who can help recreate something special for her mother. Abigail replied that my friend had told her I'd be interested in this project. She emphasized that it was important and she was willing to pay well. I apologized for any confusion, but said all my friends knew I didn't do commission work anymore. I asked which friend had recommended me. She named Mike, saying he had told her I was the best and would definitely do this for her. I frowned at my phone. Mike knew my no-commission policy. We'd discussed it multiple times, and I'd even declined to do a piece for his sister's wedding gift last year. I messaged back, apologizing again for the confusion. I explained that Mike was aware that I didn't take commissions anymore and wished her luck finding an artist for her project. Abigail responded that this was disappointing and that Mike had made it sound like a done deal. I put my phone down, annoyed at Mike, but figuring I'd text him later to remind him not to recommend me for commission work. Before I could even start dinner, my phone exploded with texts from Mike. Mike demanded to know why I had turned down Abigail's commission. I reminded him that I don't do commissions anymore and that he knew this. He angrily explained that he'd been trying to get a date with her for months and finally had an in when she mentioned wanting an embroidery piece for her mom. He had told her he knew someone amazing who could help. I asked why he would tell her that when he knew I didn't take commissions. Mike dismissed my concern, calling it just a stupid embroidery and not like he'd asked me to donate a kidney. He complained that he had built me up to her and now looked like an idiot. I apologized that he was in an awkward position, but explained that I had made this decision for my mental health. I told him my art wasn't just a favor I could do for his dating life. Mike begged me to do just this one piece, offering to pay double whatever she offered. He emphasized that he really liked her, and now she thought he was a liar. I pointed out that he did lie to her, and that wasn't on me. Mike questioned our friendship and said he thought I'd have his back. The texts continued, with Mike alternating between guilt trips and anger. I showed the conversation to my wife that evening. After reading through the messages, my wife said Mike was being ridiculous and that I wasn't responsible for his dating strategies. I agreed, but admitted I felt bad and wondered if I should just do this one piece to help him out. My wife gave me the look and said I should not do it. She reminded me that I had made a boundary for my mental health, and if I broke it now, Mike would expect me to break it again and again. I knew she was right, but I still felt guilty. The next morning, I had more messages from both Mike and Abigail. Abigail offered to pay $300 for a simple piece, saying Mike had told her I'd reconsider if she explained how important this was to her. Meanwhile, Mike was pleading with me to just do it, saying he had told her I'd think about it and that he would do anything. I was torn. On one hand, I didn't want to hurt my friendship with Mike. On the other hand, I knew my wife was right. If I gave in now, the boundary would be permanently broken. After a day of consideration, I sent them both the same message. I explained that I understood this was important, but I had made a decision years ago to stop taking commissions because it was affecting my mental health. I offered to recommend 3 excellent embroidery artists who did commission work, all of whom I respected greatly. I included their Instagram handles and hoped that they would understand this wasn't personal. It was about maintaining boundaries that kept me healthy and allowed me to continue enjoying my art. Abigail responded first, saying she understood and thanking me for the recommendations. Mike sarcastically thanked me for nothing and claimed that real friends help each other out. I decided to give him some space to cool down. 3 days later, I received another message from Abigail. She wanted to let me know she had commissioned one of the artists I recommended and that the artist had been wonderful to work with. She also mentioned she had declined Mike's invitation for a date, explaining that anyone who would try to pressure their friend into breaking their boundaries wasn't someone she wanted to date. She complimented my work as beautiful and encouraged me to keep creating on my own terms. I showed the message to my wife, who smiled and pointed out that standing firm had been the right call. I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I picked up my current project, an intricate woodland scene I was embroidering just for the joy of it, and felt that familiar sense of peace wash over me. This is why I made that decision 3 years ago, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me regret it. I'm currently 39 weeks pregnant with my first child, a baby girl due next Thursday. My pregnancy should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but my mother-in-law has made it stressful. The problem started around my second trimester, when I began planning for the delivery. I made it clear that the only person I wanted in the delivery room was my husband. Most people would understand this is a personal decision, but not my mother-in-law. She started insisting she needed to be in the delivery room. During a family dinner, she told me she had given birth to 3 children and claimed she knew what I would be going through. She said I would need her there. I told her I appreciated the offer, but had already decided I only wanted my husband with me. She argued that she was family and should be there to see her grandbaby come into the world. My husband tried to support me, but he struggles with setting boundaries with his mother. He reminded her that we had already discussed this and that it was my decision who would be in the delivery room. She responded by saying she didn't understand why she couldn't be there, pointing out that his sister had allowed her to be present for all 3 of her deliveries. The argument escalated until I mentioned that my parents would be visiting after the baby was born. That's when she lost it. She complained that it wasn't fair that my parents would get to see the baby first, while she wouldn't even be there for the birth. After this blow-up, I decided no one would visit at the hospital, not even my own parents. I just wanted peace during recovery, and it seemed like the only fair solution. My parents understood, but my mother-in-law took it as a personal attack. The second issue has been about our daughter's name. We've decided to name her after my grandfather, who I've been close with my entire life. We wanted to keep the name a secret so it would be a surprise for him when she's born. It's a tribute to a man who's been like a father to me. But my mother-in-law couldn't handle not knowing. She's called at least once a week asking about the name. At first, she tried to be subtle. She claimed she was just wondering about the name so she could get personalized gifts for the nursery. Then she tried guilt, asking if I didn't trust her to keep a secret and questioning why I would tell my parents but not her. I told her that no one knew the name, not even my parents, but that didn't stop her. The breaking point came last week when she visited our house. I caught her going through my hospital bag while I was in the bathroom. She was searching for the baby's welcome home outfit or anything that might have the name on it. When I discovered her, I asked what she was doing. She quickly made up an excuse, saying she was just making sure I had packed everything I needed. I called her out, telling her I knew she was going through my personal things trying to find out the baby's name. She defended herself by saying she didn't understand why it was such a big secret and emphasized that she was the baby's grandmother. Yesterday, she called my husband again with a new manipulation tactic. She asked what if something happened to her and she never got to know her baby's name. For reference, she's in good health and works a desk job. There's no reason to believe anything would happen to her before the baby is born next week. When my husband told me about this conversation, something in me snapped. I'd had enough of her entitlement and manipulation. I called her myself. I explained that I understood she had called my husband about the baby's name again. I told her that this was our decision and we wanted to surprise my grandfather. I then set a clear boundary, stating that from that point forward, if she asked about the name again, she wouldn't meet the baby for at least 3 weeks after she was born, with each additional inquiry adding another week to that time frame. She responded angrily, saying I couldn't do that and accusing me of being cruel. She even claimed the baby was hers too. I corrected her, emphasizing that this was our baby, her son's and mine, not hers. She insisted she had a right to meet her granddaughter, and that I couldn't keep the baby from her. I clarified that I wasn't keeping her away permanently, just setting a boundary that she needed to respect our decisions as parents. Before hanging up, she threatened to call my husband, claiming he would never allow this. After she hung up, I talked with my husband and showed him all the messages and explained the situation. Something clicked for him. He saw how his mother had been manipulating both of us and taking advantage of his gentle nature. That evening, he sent her a message. In it, he acknowledged that after their conversation the previous day, he could see her behavior had gotten out of hand. He explained that while he understood she was excited to meet their baby, her actions had shown they couldn't trust her around the child. He stated that until they received an apology and saw that her actions had changed, she would not be meeting the baby. He also told her that I would no longer be communicating with her, and that any further communication should be directed to him alone. I was proud of him for standing up for our family. We've now decided not to tell anyone when I go into labor, except for a trusted friend who will take care of our dogs and horses. I've also told my delivery team that no visitors are allowed under any circumstances. As my due date approaches, I feel better. I can focus on bringing our daughter into the world without worrying about my mother-in-law barging into the delivery room or pressuring us about the name. My husband and I are united, and that's all that matters. I haven't heard from my mother-in-law since my husband sent that message. I'm sure there will be more drama to come, but for now, I'm enjoying the peace and preparing to meet our little girl. I'm a 30-year-old guy who's been living independently since college. About 6 months ago, I was looking for a new place after my previous lease ended. The rental market in our city is tough, and prices have gone through the roof. My budget wasn't enough for a decent one-bedroom apartment, so I started looking for roommates. Through a mutual friend, I found this married couple looking to move out of their parents' house. They're both in their late 20s with 2 kids, and they've been living with the wife's parents to save money. We met up, seemed to get along well enough, and found a 3-bedroom house that worked for all of us. The rent split was fair. They took the master bedroom and one smaller room for their kids, while I took the other bedroom. We all signed the lease together and moved in. Living with them has been mostly fine. They're clean, pay their share on time, and their kids are well behaved when they're around. The couple works opposite shifts to save on childcare, so there's usually only one of them home at a time, and the kids spend weekends at their grandparents' house. It's been a decent arrangement. Until yesterday. I was making dinner when they both came into the kitchen looking cheerful. The husband asked if I had a minute to talk. I told him sure and asked what was up. The wife explained that their anniversary was coming up next week and they were thinking of doing something special. I congratulated them. Then the husband explained their situation. He said they'd never lived on their own as a couple. They went from their parents' houses to marriage to living with her parents, and now with me. The wife jumped in and told me they were thinking it would be romantic to have a staycation here at the house. Just the 2 of them, no kids, no parents, and no... She didn't finish the sentence, but the way they looked at me made it clear what the no was referring to. I asked if they wanted the house to themselves for an evening. The husband said they were actually thinking more like the whole week. I nearly choked on my water. I asked where I was supposed to go for a week. The wife told me they had talked to her parents, who said I could stay in their guest room. She added that it was nice, with a pool and everything. I tried to clarify what they were asking. I explained that they wanted me to leave my home, where I pay rent, for an entire week to stay with people I've met twice, so they could pretend they live alone. The husband admitted that when I put it that way, it sounded bad. I agreed that it was bad and unreasonable. The wife insisted this was important to them. She repeated that they've never had their own space as a couple. She explained that the kids would be at his parents' place, and they just wanted to experience what it's like to have their own home. I reminded them that it's not their own home. It's our shared home. I'm on the lease, just like they are, and I pay my third of the rent. The husband tried to convince me it was just a week and claimed they'd do the same for me. I asked when would I ever ask them to leave their home for a week, saying that's not a thing people ask their roommates. The wife called me selfish, saying this was an important milestone for them. I asked if I was being selfish for not wanting to be kicked out of my own home. By this point, I was confused about whether I was missing something. Was this a normal request that I was overreacting to? But the more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. I told them the answer was no, and that I wasn't leaving for a week. I offered a compromise, saying if they wanted to have a special night or 2, I could make myself scarce and stay with a friend, but a whole week was too much. The wife told me to forget it. She said she knew I wouldn't understand, and added that this is why people shouldn't have roommates once they're adults. She walked off, and her husband gave me a shrug before following her. The next morning, I woke up to a text from her mother. She wrote that she heard I was being difficult about giving the kids some alone time. She claimed they really needed this, had been through a lot, and deserved a chance to be a normal couple. She asked me to reconsider. They had gotten her mother involved. I didn't respond to the text, but later that day, Both of them were giving me the silent treatment. The wife unplugged the router when she knew I had an important Zoom meeting for work. When I asked her about it, she just offered a fake apology. This morning, I found a printed itinerary on the kitchen counter, detailing their plans for our Home Alone week starting next Monday. They had planned out the whole week as if my agreement was a given. There were even notes about bedroom activities scheduled for multiple rooms in the house, including my bedroom. That was the last straw. I called the landlord and asked about the terms of our lease. Turns out, we're all joint tenants, which means they can't force me to leave. I also found out that they had asked the landlord if they could change the locks temporarily for security reasons, which the landlord had denied. I told them I'd spoken to the landlord and they couldn't change the locks, and they couldn't make me leave because this is my home too. The wife denied they were going to change the locks, claiming they just wanted to make sure the house was secure while I was gone. I pointed out that they were talking about a trip I never agreed to take. I offered my compromise. I would stay with a friend for Friday and Saturday night, so they could have the weekend to themselves. That was it. The husband said that wasn't enough time. I told them it was more than generous and they could take it or leave it. The wife said I was ruining everything and claimed they'd been planning this for months. I asked if they had been planning to kick me out of my own home without asking me first, saying that's not planning, that's delusion. They're still angry, but I'm standing my ground. The wife's mother keeps texting me, and now other family members are weighing in too, saying I'm being cruel to a young couple who just wants some normalcy. Am I missing something here? Is it normal to expect your roommate to vacate for an entire week? Because from where I'm standing, these people are acting entitled to something that isn't theirs alone. The house is as much mine as it is theirs, and I shouldn't have to leave just because they want to play house. Update: they've now offered to pay for a hotel for me for the week. While I appreciate the gesture, it doesn't change the principle of the matter. This is my home. I shouldn't have to leave it for anyone. Plus, I work from home most days, and a hotel isn't good for that. I've stuck with my original offer of the weekend, and they're still acting like I've done something terrible to their marriage. The silent treatment continues, but I'm done feeling guilty about it. I thought having a baby would turn into a family war, but here I am, 24 years old, a new mom with a baby boy, and I've upset half my husband's family. Let me back up. I grew up in a home where my mom was supportive and never pushed her opinions on me. We could talk about anything, and she made me feel heard. When I met my husband 3 years ago, I knew he was the one. He's 27, kind, and hardworking. His family is very traditional, especially his mother. We get along fine with small talk, but when household matters come up, it becomes a battlefield. She believes a woman should do everything while the men relax. I was raised differently. When I found out I was pregnant, I was happy. My husband and I prepared everything together. But as my due date got closer, I started worrying about the omugwo, a Nigerian tradition where either my mom or my mother-in-law would stay with us after childbirth to help me recover and care for the baby. After giving birth, everything changed. My body felt foreign, my emotions were everywhere, and I had new sensitivities. I couldn't stand being touched. Bright lights gave me headaches, and loud noises made me anxious. Everyone understood, except my mother-in-law. 3 weeks after bringing the baby home, my mother-in-law called. She asked when she should come for the omugwo and said she had packed her bags. I told her I had asked my mom to come that weekend. There was silence. Then she erupted. She told me about tradition, saying the husband's mother gets first preference. She said I was disrespectful and keeping her from her grandchild. I explained she would see the baby plenty of times, just not while living with us. She called me lazy and said I didn't want her there because she would make me do things properly. She hung up. 10 minutes later, my husband's phone rang. I heard her voice through the speaker, telling him to set me straight. My husband stood by me. He told her that I had just given birth and it was my decision who I wanted helping me. When my mom was supposed to arrive, she called from the airport. She suggested letting my mother-in-law come too, for peace. I refused, saying it would be too many people and I needed calm. My mom arrived at noon and we were settling in when someone knocked loudly. I opened it to find my mother-in-law with my father-in-law and 3 suitcases. My mother-in-law said they had arrived and asked where to put their things. I reminded her my mom was coming and that she couldn't stay. She said I was being ridiculous, that she was staying and told me to move. She tried to push past me, but I blocked the door. I said she wasn't staying here, that she could visit during the day. Her face turned red. She called me ungrateful, a bad daughter-in-law, and a worse mother. She said I wasn't giving my grandson what he deserved. Something in me snapped. I shouted back, asking what my son deserved and what I deserved. I said I didn't want her there because she would criticize everything while giving her son a pass for being lazy, like she did with her husband and other son. I told her she wouldn't make me feel like a maid, that I deserved people who loved me, not people who picked when to care. I said she wasn't going to use my child as a second chance because she failed the first time. The silence after was heavy. My husband looked hurt. He turned and walked to our bedroom, shutting the door. My mother-in-law's mouth opened and closed. My father-in-law cleared his throat. He said they understood I didn't want them there, but I didn't have to be harsh. They left. Within an hour, my phone had messages from my sister-in-law and other in-laws calling me disrespectful. That night, after my mom took the baby so I could talk to my husband, I found him looking at baby pictures of himself. I said sorry for what I said about his mom and that I was overwhelmed. He said, growing up, he thought that's how families worked. He and his dad didn't help because his mom never asked. He never knew she might have wanted help but was afraid to ask. I said I shouldn't have said she failed as a parent. He said maybe she did, but so did his dad, and now he worried he would fail too. I told him he wouldn't, that we were in this together. The next morning, my father-in-law was at our door alone. He asked to see his grandson. While holding the baby, he said his wife could be stubborn, but so could he. He said he'd never helped with household work, and maybe it was time he learned. And maybe she should learn that traditions can change. 2 days later, my mother-in-law came back with a small gift for the baby and an awkward apology. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Things won't change overnight, but now we're talking about it. And my husband has started doing the dishes without being asked.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, drop them in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next video.